nature beyond birth and death, to wisdom and love shining forever. I bow to the Buddha within. Here. Want me to carry on?
You can announce it, Lama Shenpen will be here in 5 minutes.
Welcome everybody to this
You might have to wait for Katie to get
Welcome everybody to this meditation day teaching. Lama Shenpen will be here in 5 minutes.
Oh, more soon. There's everyone got a chair that they want to. Do you want to come forward a bit? Would you like to come? Have you here? Sure. So you can rearrange things.
There's a seat up here.
There's a spare seat there actually. Oh, yeah. And there.
Before we start, is there anyone who really doesn't want to be seen on the internet? Because it's all going to be at Shenpen, but just in case anyone asks a question. Okay.
Oh God.
The quality isn't wonderful, so we're not going to see any wrinkles.
everything is unconditional. The power of true being, that is the essence of all dependent arising. The power of your great insight fills the universe with auspicious light. Almighty Shepherd Dorje, please rise up now from within my heart. Jemila Shepherd Dorje la soa del so. 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 Lord Nila, laughing Vajra, I call to you. 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 So, this afternoon I'm going to be talking about how to deepen our resolve and not to make egocentric effort. I think that's more or less the title, wasn't it? Last time I was talking about the importance of resolve, that we talk about awareness and about letting things be and not, if you like, acceptance and opening and responding and being in the moment. These things sound very Buddhist, don't they? But then we also talk about resolve, like very directed action. That's also very Buddhist. They almost sound contradictory, don't they? And I think when we think of being very directed, very determined, very disciplined, very focused, I tend to think of that as being something that we need to be quite egocentric about. We need to make an effort. I need to do this great thing that I've decided I'm going to do. Or maybe it's not as great as all that, but anyway, whatever it is, I'm deciding to do this. Therefore, I'm going to have to make choices, I'm going to have to make judgments, I'm going to have to discriminate between things, I'm going to have to favour some things over others. I'm going to have to use my mind, my thinking mind, and that sounds like business as usual. That doesn't sound so relaxed, does it? Whereas perhaps we feel, well, I'm doing that too much already, and what I need to do is be more relaxed, and that's why I need to be more aware and more accepting and less judgmental, and not struggling with the world so much, but letting it be as it is. Sort of, that's what my meditation is about. You know, in the meditation, thoughts come up, tension comes up, relax it, relax the body, relax the mind, let things be, let things go, notice the thoughts in the space of awareness. Yeah, that's more of that. That sounds like where I need to go. And then the next thing you find is that you're not doing the meditation. Somehow you're not finding time for it. And you've got all these other things you need to do. And then you realise, oh, if I'm going to spend time doing this lovely meditation, I'm going to have some, I'm going to have to think about it. I'm going to have to find time. I'm going to have to make resolves. I'm going to have to keep to a discipline. You might have noticed that straight away, but you might not have noticed that strange, almost a tension between those two states of mind, being very relaxed and being very determined, very decided, very resolved. And making difficult decisions, because obviously if you're spending time, doing meditation, then you're not spending that time doing something else that, as you all know, there's endless things that one could be filling one's time doing, and every time you choose to do one thing, you're actually at the same time choosing not to do others, and that can be quite difficult. And that doesn't feel quite like, in order to maintain that, I have to be quite strong-minded. I might have to actually stand up against other people who have claims on my time, or think they have. And that might feel a bit selfish. And, what are you going to do about that? Are you just going to treat it as another thought and relax? Or are you going to investigate it to see whether that's true or not? In which case you're going to need to think, you have to reflect on that. So we're going to have to manage that. Both are very important. And it's a matter of getting the right balance. And generally speaking, on the path of practice as a Dharma practitioner, you'll find it's always about balance and how to be simple and at the same time aware of these kind of tensions and conflicts and discomforts, as it were. From the point of view of a non-enlightened person, it's all rather kind of not easy. It's like once you're off balance, it's really difficult to do even such a simple thing as keep your balance. I was thinking of the image of riding a bicycle. When you first start riding a bicycle, you're fighting the whole time to keep your balance. You go off one way and you correct it and you're going the other way. And you have to correct that and then suddenly you can keep your balance. You don't have to think about it anymore. Your whole body knows how to keep your balance, which actually is very complex, but feels simple because you're doing it from the right intuitive place, to be honest. You find it gradually and you customize yourself to it gradually and your body adjusts to it gradually and then it becomes simple from a central point somehow. You don't have to do that. and I don't need to think about it. Concept and and at the same time we need if you're growing a plant in the middle of a busy street where people are walking up and down all the time, so you're trying to grow your realization of non-conceptual awareness, and the whole time it's being trodden on and walked on and knocked about, it's not going to make much progress. It's going to need something around it to fence it and defend it. So like a nice strong fence so that people walk this way and that way and they don't actually trample it. And you could compare that with keeping some sort of resolve or discipline. So the obvious thing that we do is we take refuge. We decide, okay, the most important thing in my life is to follow the Buddha's teaching to the reality that lies beyond all suffering, beyond birth and death. That's going to be what I'm resolving. That's my resolve, that's my determination, that's my direction. Everything else will follow from that. And then as we make that resolve, it's as if the universe itself is responding, the Buddhas are responding, because that's what they want us to wish. And if we wish that, they can make that come true. So it's like slotting into something very powerful. And then it's like we then have this fence around us. That's who we are, what we are, where we're going, and there is protection. And you can look at that on all sorts of levels. There's as much sense of protection in the sense that there's a strong boundary around your world, as it were, your intention, but it's also created a world in some ways. It's created a world that's connected to the world of awakening. You've kind of got a house in the world of awakening somehow. You're there. You're part of that whole structure. And so that naturally protects you from simply being thrown here or there. Sometimes that's expressed in terms of a lineage or a tradition or an institution of some kind, like monastic vows or but not necessarily. It's the sense of connection is much deeper than that. You could say the sense of connection is formless. It doesn't have a form, but it can manifest in various forms. So you could say the tradition that we're following here doesn't really have a form, but there are lots of forms associated with it that when you see them, you know this is, oh, it's that same lineage, it's that lineage. The lineage itself doesn't have a form, the tradition doesn't have a form, but when you see the forms that are associated with it, they're signals to you, oh, that is that lineage. So they're signs of something that's there that's formless, they're expressions of something that's formless. And this all relates to the teachings in Discovering the Heart of Buddhism on Mandala principle. That actually just by being a person, we are we are expressing Mandala principle. In our true essence, we're, if you like, formless, no particular form. You can see that in our everyday life. Some days, you know, we might be well and happy, and another day we're miserable. You know, we could lose, our hands, feet, faculties. Then we'd be kind of different, but we're still exactly the same person, because we're the same mandala and we've got all the same connections. And that makes us very special. Makes us, we have our own particular unique contribution or power to benefit others through our connections. There's never going to be anyone quite like you for your mother. You will always be that special person, and it doesn't have to be your mother. It could be your neighbours, it could be your friends, it could be strangers in the street. You have a particular unique connection with everybody you meet, and that gives you meaning, really. It gives you meaning, but it also gives you responsibility that you can, through how you are, affect your whole mandala for the better, or obviously for the worse, but we won't mention that. And that has something to do with resolve as well, because when you make a resolve, like perhaps you've decided to make this big resolve to take refuge and become a follower of the Buddha, and that's going to be what your whole life is about, that is actually going to affect your whole mandala. It's going to affect everybody. Maybe some people won't even notice it, but it will have affected them very much, because whether they know it or not, they now have connection with a Buddhist, somebody who's a follower of the Buddha, which is actually affecting their karma, because until you have some connection with the teachings of awakening, it's very hard for you to gravitate towards them. But if you're in a world where you've got a friend who's actually dedicated to that path, you've got a connection to the path through that person, whether you know it or not. And if you know it, if those people know it and can even be pleased about it, you're benefiting them in a fantastic way. You could be changing their karma for lifetimes to come. So I wanted to make that point when it comes to making our resolves, that the resolve, in a sense, is coming from a place that's formless and is expressed in a form that actually is integral to your whole mandala and your whole world. So it's not simply a matter of, it's not as simple as individualism tends to be presented in the West. I mean, there's something to be said for you are an individual, and that's important. But the kind of individualism that feels I could be anything, I could do anything, if I don't succeed, it's all my fault because I'm a failure or I'm a success. I think this is pretty much sums up what we mean by individualism. People thinking in those very atomistic terms, like I'm just a separate kind of being that is somehow not integral to my situation. So that tends to lead to a lot of restlessness, because we tend to feel perhaps we're in the wrong place. I should have been somewhere else. I shouldn't have been here anyway. And that that kind of undermines our resolve, and replaces what should be a natural sense of significance, the significance of your life and your being, with a sense of insignificance and meaninglessness. Like, well, I haven't made I haven't done any great thing, therefore I can't be very significant. It's not possible. You are a being, therefore you are significant. You have endless significance. It's what you do is going to be significant. It really matters what you do. And perhaps our perception of what choices we have is not quite as not quite what we tend to think our choices are. So that's what I wanted to talk about a bit, is resolve in terms of choices. Contrary to what they say, I don't think we want too many choices, because choices are painful. You're having to really stabilize your mandala, to really, for it to function well, it needs to be stabilized and stable. It needs to be clear and not confused, not too many currents crisscrossing and becoming confused. It needs to have a clear structure that can then be effective in realizing your resolve, if you like. So, okay, if you've made it very clear by saying, okay, the main thing in my life is taking refuge in the Buddha and following the Buddha's teachings, so now I'll orientate everything around that. Then everybody who comes in touch with it will know that's what they have to deal with, and they will orientate themselves accordingly, and you'll be able to be effective in the way you follow the path. Whereas if you kind of would like to follow the Buddha's teaching, but you never find time to really discover what they are, and you don't find time to listen to talks or to do any practice, or then you kind of, one side of you is wanting to follow the Buddha's teaching, but another side of you is choosing on a day-to-day basis to not find time to do that. So there's some sort of conflict there, and you don't know, and nobody else knows quite which way you're going to jump at any point, which takes up an awful lot of energy. Internally in yourself and externally in your world. You could end up with everybody resenting you because you're taking up their energy, because you're not being clear. And it can be big things, it can be small things, typical small thing. This is Shikpo's example of wanting to lose weight and wanting to eat cakes. If you insist that I want to eat as many cakes as I want, and I want to lose weight, then you're constantly like this. You're using a lot of energy feeling bad about being overweight, and a lot of energy sort of feeling bad about eating cakes. And you're not really doing either properly. So kind of just make up your mind, do you want, you can't, you can't have both. So you've got to decide, okay, actually I think cakes is really important, so let's forget about beating myself up about being overweight, or no, I don't want to be overweight, that's I really don't want that, so therefore I'm going to limit cakes. And then you can you can reach some sort of clarity and manifest some kind of clarity and reap the results of what you're doing. I think that's a nice example of, and I think we waste an awful lot of energy actually by not facing what's going on in our different systems of values, so that and especially these days, I think we have so many things that we could possibly be doing, or possibly succeed at, or possibly get involved in. And then if we choose one thing, of course we can't do the other things, and therefore we feel bad about all the things we haven't done. And sometimes don't even notice what we have done. I don't know if that. It certainly rings a bell for me that I can reach the end of a day and add up all the things I haven't done. And it's quite a gear shift to turn around and say, okay, now let's think about what you did do. Actually, that wasn't a bad day, that was a pretty good day. Then actually, in terms of my resolve to live my life following the Buddha's path, yeah, you know, I can feel good, I've done that. Okay, then there's all the other things that, you know, are going to cause problems because I haven't done them. Nonetheless, I couldn't do everything. That's just pain, that's just pain. That's just, you know, mourning that, feeling the pain of that, along with everybody else. But that doesn't have to make me, I don't need to lose energy over that, because I've put my energy where I meant to put my energy, and, you know, that will have the consequences that, you know, that I set out to achieve. So a little bit of thought at that moment helps me to know where to let go, and where to, if you like, foster an attitude to foster, and an attitude, you know, thoughts that I don't actually need. You know, okay, it's true, all the things that I thought about how bad it was that I didn't do all those things, it's all true, but I don't need to foster that. I can, okay, I'll pick them up tomorrow morning when I'm fresh, see what I can do. But to waste energy over that, I don't need to waste energy over that. And that's how you strengthen your resolve, really, by putting your energy where it needs to go. And it also, because you're not wasting energy, you've got more energy, and therefore you're more relaxed, because it's very stressful to find you've got a lot of things to do that you think you need to do, and you don't have much energy. It's I think we all recognise that one, don't we? So thinking is important. How you think is important. And when it talks about, you know, letting thoughts just be in the meditation, that shows you have the power to do that. You don't have to be disturbed by all these voices that tell you haven't done enough and you haven't done it well enough and whatever else they're telling you. Maybe something totally different, but you can choose which ones you're going to take notice of. And one of the key things with being clear about your resolves is to be realistic. And I think one of the things that perhaps as a society we don't really value enough is being simple, is not having too many ideas. We tend to admire people who have a lot of ideas. And I notice in Tibetan society, it's not like that. They admire people who don't have too many ideas. Because if you have too many ideas, you know, you're just bubbling away. There's nothing really stabilizing. Whereas if you're careful about your ideas, you relate them to your world, and you follow it through in a very simple way, you're very reliable, you're very energized, you're very you're not making a lot of fuss because you're not trying to do too many things, you're kind of relaxed. That's the kind of person you want to be. So there's a very strong cultural tendency to admire and want to be like that kind of person. Whereas we tend to have this idea, I want to be a star, I want to be somebody who everyone notices, I want to have achieved a lot, I want to, be original and different. These are kind of values that float around, don't they? I don't know, maybe you disagree, but something like that. I often give this as an example. If I want to introduce somebody and to a Tibetan, normally speaking, I mean, I don't know all Tibetans, but certainly to Lamas, and I want to, this is a good person, I think you're going to be interested in. I say, they're a good, stable person. Oh, really? Right. Oh, what's your thing? They really want to know who you are. If I was to say, well, they've written about 20 books on all sorts of different subjects, they say, yeah. So what? What's that to me? It's very different, sort of, if you like, cultural milieu that they're in, but they are wonderful in terms of resolve. I mean, when you look what they've achieved since they've come out of Tibet, they just decide. They think, okay, I'm very grateful for all the teachings I've received. I want to help people who haven't had the same opportunities as I am. So I'm going to set up a school. Okay, they have nothing. They have no money. They've got, no contacts. But that's what they decide to do. And then, 5 or 10 years later, that's what they've got. And doing well. And they're single-minded like that. Really single-minded, but very... Yeah, they have this very sort of strong sense of resolve. I mean, you could say it gets distorted in all sorts of ways. Obviously, sometimes, sectarian ambitions and even personal ambition comes in there too and sort of gets mixed up in it. But fundamentally, they've got the sense that you can't do everything. I'm making my choices. These are my choices, and that's where I'm going. And they do it. And it's really important quality in terms of practicing the Dharma. And then, of course, it can go over into obsessiveness, can't it? Like you decide, I'm going to build this, or whatever it is I'm going to do, and you can see that it's not realistic. And mind you, quite often things that they say they're going to do, I've thought was unrealistic, and I was wrong, which is really interesting. But at some point, a project that you've set your heart on starts to, you start to wonder if you should think again about it. Whatever project it is. And then it's a matter of what are you going to use as your reference for success or failure? This is something that you've got to... It's got to be part of the resolve that you made in the first place. There has to be a reason why you made it. And that comes from, if it comes from some kind of airy-fairy place, then your project becomes some kind of obsession because, you're holding on to these ideas that you kind of not even ever really investigated. But if from the start you were coming from a very clear resolve and you knew why you were doing it, you then have a reference for whether actually it's time to call it a day. And the chances are you won't find that that there's a reason to call it a day. The chances are that if it's coming from a really good place, the very fact that you're doing it is already reason enough to be doing it. It already has a power. That the fact that it succeeds or doesn't succeed is kind of not even part of it. It's the resolve itself that's the important thing. I'm always was struck born in Tibet when Trungpa Rinpoche realized that the Chinese were going to come and destroy the country. He decided the next thing he was going to do is build, I can't remember, was it a library or something? Seminary. Because that would be a good thing to be doing at the moment when the Dhamma was destroyed in Tibet. Which I found really an interesting take on how to make your resolves. is it a good thing in itself that I'm resolving to do and I'm putting all my energy into doing, regardless of what external circumstances allow? And then you can dedicate yourself to it, because at whatever point it's truncated, which you're going to die suddenly, aren't you, at some point? So you probably won't have finished whatever it was you last resolved to do. But would that be a good thing to be doing at the moment I died? Would that be, and to have given yourself to that? And that, if you can live with your resolves, I mean, as I said, you're taking refuge, so you're not going to give that up until you're enlightened. So you'll always have that. And then perhaps there's other ones that you make along the way that you're not going to give up. And that's what the resolve's about. I'm not going to give up on it. And it doesn't become obsessive, because it's not about the result. It's about what I'm putting into it, that I really believe in. Where it gets kind of obsessive and pig-headed is when it's really fixed to a particular result that you won't let go of, and it's causing all sorts of difficulties for your whole mandala. And that's when sort of the admiration for your single-minded resolve turns into complete frustration at your pig-headedness. It's interesting, isn't it? I was thinking about that this morning and thinking, this is a difficult topic, really. Where does that switch happen? Like everything that could be a virtue can, with not much effort, can be turned into its opposite, something that's actually quite egocentric. And egocentric always involves me and my idea that I'm fixated on. Whereas a resolve is, if you like, me in a much deeper sense, like my whole being and what I have to offer, and the way I'm orientating it. Like it's kind of feels completely different, actually, but could sound the same, couldn't it? Like, maybe. Anyway, I did find it a very interesting question of how do you strengthen your resolve, and at the same time not get confused by egocentric effort. Yes, I was thinking egocentric effort. This idea, this me and my ambition, if you like, it's like that idea can become like you become dogmatic, like, okay, I've taken refuge, I've become a Buddhist, so now, my ambition now is to make everybody Buddhist who I meet, which could be kind of, in itself, is a wonderful thing, that you want everybody to benefit from the truth of the Dharma. You could say that, underlay it, but because of the mindset of me and my project to change everybody and to present Dharma in a way that, is simple and straightforward, can become just like dogmatism of some kind. I'm just holding on to my dogmatic ideas and trying to impose them on the rest of the world. So how does that, you can sort of feel the stickiness of that, can't you? It's a resolve. but it's you kind of would like a person to have less resolve and more more openness, clarity and sensitivity, or more sense of the rest of the world and the connections with the rest of the world. Whereas you could have that as your resolve, that whoever I meet and wherever and whenever I meet them, may they all receive a connection to the Dharma through the power of my faith and connection in the Dharma. And just that's where you're coming from, but you don't say anything. You don't force your ideas on other people. The chances are that that would be, well, not even chances. I mean, that would be very powerful way to practice. And the other way that one can kind of distort the resolve is for it to become an idea, and you like it as an idea. So you're attached to your idea, but you don't actually live it. It's kind of like your idea that you keep in your pocket to take out when you like to look at it, but you don't actually change. You don't actually notice. It's just an idea. Like everything's perfect from the very beginning. It's a lovely idea. Yeah. I resolve now to realise that, and somehow I think that I can think myself into that, and just because I like the idea, I think it must be right. But actually, as an idea, it doesn't have much effect. It's got to be something that you realise, which means you've got to follow the path from where you are now, and that's quite challenging, because what kind of a point of view is it that everything that's happening is perfect from the very beginning? It's not it's a very special point of view. Deep and transforming. You're not like an ordinary person if you can see things like that. And it actually gives rise to, well, it releases, if you like, the compassionate power of the universe. If you could see things like that, then naturally all your connections in the whole universe would be filled with this power of compassion that would be benefiting others. It's quite something. So in between times, we have to make an effort to create, if you like, practice mandala, and we have got to make the effort to look at those places that we don't want to look at, and to examine the teachings as they're presented and come to some genuine understanding of them. So there's a lot of reflection to do, a lot of thinking to do, a lot of decisions to be made, and that is all part of the path. So, okay, in the meditation, that's the time when we set time aside to really give ourselves the space to recognize the simplicity of our experience, and to find something that we can have confidence in. But then when we come out of the practice, out of the meditation practice, it's really important to spend time reflecting and thinking and making good decisions. So it's not that you should wander around for the rest of the day not thinking. It's the thinking and the meditation need to be going along in parallel. There's a listening to the teachings, or studying the teachings, there's a reflecting on it, and then the meditation, and then the meditation feeds back into the way we listen, and the listening feeds back into the way we reflect, which feeds back into the way we meditate, and they're feeding into each other the whole time, and it's all of a piece. So, you know, you might think sometimes, oh, I didn't have much time to meditate. But if you spent time during the day reflecting deeply on the Dharma, or noticing things that have happened in the day and understanding them from the Dharma point of view, you are practicing Dharma. So you could be doing it all the time. And you can make a resolve to do it all the time in that sense. Well, I'm in danger of having too many ideas. So I think what I'll do is I'll stop there, and then you can ask me questions and you can go somewhere from there.
Do you say that the idea of self-discipline is a bit of a harsh idea compared to resolve? If you decide that you're going to follow some particular way of being, some behaviours as a discipline to keep yourself up to it to start with?
Well, I think that's where you need to go back to why you're disciplining yourself. So you might find that when you might decide, okay, I'm going to meditate every day, and then part of you thinking, oh, I don't know, I don't think I will, so I don't think I'll make that. Oh, and then you think, oh, I'm not very disciplined, and so are you thinking that kind of thing, sort of battle going on with yourself?
Battle, yes.
Yeah.
If it is a bit of a battle, are you really doing what you want to do? If it's that
Well, that's why you need to go back and look to yourself. Well, why do I think that I should be doing meditation every day? You know, why? Is it because I think then I'd be a good little girl? Or is it because I think when I don't meditate, it makes my life even worse than it would have been had I meditated? You know, like I really can see the benefit of it and I really want to do it. So if it's just a voice telling you, something I ought to do, it's not really important, it's just thinking. But then you need to go back into, well, what do I think I ought to be doing? And you may feel to yourself there's a reason why you want to be, you've got a resolve, but it's not that. And then you know why you've got that resolve, and then you put your energy into that resolve that you've got because you know why you've got it. Then it might change, it might at some point develop into something else, but you don't want the drain on your energy of something that isn't really you, because that just drains your energy. It's a conflict, because one part of you wants that and this other part thinks, but you ought to want this, and then the energy's all lost. But if you think, okay, I want to do this and I can see a good reason for doing this, I'll put all my energy into that, then if this comes up as an idea, you can adopt it if you want. Does that make sense? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's about being positive about why you're doing something, rather than thinking of all the things you're losing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We waste a lot of energy.
Of doing something, not the negatives of loss.
It does.
Like cake, for instance, as you said, the decision whether or not to eat cake. That's a very good, simple example.
Yeah, that was Winston Shikman's one. I never noticed him wanting to give up eat cake.
You wouldn't see yourself as depriving yourself of cake. You'd see yourself as enhancing your healthiness.
Yeah, whatever it is that you want. So that's the important thing. Remember what it is that you're protecting and you want, and then thoughts that are trying to entice you away from it, they're just thoughts, feelings, but they're not going to affect you because you're very clear about what you do want.
Okay.
It's really an important principle.
Is the heart wish at the centre of that?
That's right. That's what I'm talking about. That how do you know what it is that you want? You know, what do you want to put your life behind? What do you want to put your energy into? You know, it's not coming from somebody else's idea. It's coming from here. And there's something here that tells you, for example, with the cake, I really want to not have a weight problem. You know, I don't want a weight problem. Or if it's taking refuge, you know, I really don't want anything to get in the way of my Dharma practice. That's what's important, and I can feel, because, you know, with the cake, it's because I want to feel well and energetic. And if it's Dharma practice, it's because I want to do my best to end the suffering of myself and all beings. So that's why I'm doing it. And then I make a resolve that's realistic, and just keep focus on that. That's why it's so important to recognize that in your heart of hearts, you do know what you want. You know it. You don't need someone else to tell you.
We've got a question from Tiffany Atkinson.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Tiffany.
She says, could Lama Shenpen say a little bit more about the Buddhas being ready to help when you make your resolve?
All right. Well, you have to make a distinction between us, who are quite trapped in a particular time and place, because we take it as being, we really feel we're limited by time and place, don't we? That's what we think we are. And you realize, you know, just the idea of Buddha is, the Buddha realizes what's beyond time and space, what's beyond all concepts. So there isn't anywhere that the Buddhas are not. And if my heart wish is removing suffering for myself and others, and it is, I mean, if I could do that, I would do it just like that. And my heart wish is exactly what the Buddha's heart wish is, and the Buddha's heart wish is unimpeded, just wishes to remove the suffering of others, because it doesn't have any suffering itself. So that's complete, all-pervasive love. So as soon as I orientate myself towards that, it's complete reality. That is what the universe, if you like, that's what the whole of reality wants for me. How can it not support me? It's what it wants. It's got all the power in the universe, and it wants that. And I've just said, yeah, I want it, go on, do it, whatever. How can it not support you? It has to. I find that really completely overwhelmingly convincing. In a very relaxed way. It's not that I have to beg it to do it. I do have to get myself to beg myself to do it. Like when he says, oh, please hear me, it's more like, stop messing about, just orientate towards the Buddhas and they'll hear you. But the wording is written, you know, usually in these prayers it's written into like, I call to you, but in some ways it's like, I'm praying to myself to stop messing about. Just open out, just be simple, just let it come through me. I hope does that answer Tiffany's question?
She says it's wonderful.
Okay.
Tony Allen has also asked whether
Hi, Tony.
it's strengthening one's resolve. Is it a kind of chicken and egg situation where the more Dharma you study, the more heart-based one's resolve becomes, i.e., ultimately to bring all beings, bring happiness to all beings?
Yeah, as one's understanding deepens, because if you've got no understanding at all, it's very difficult to make an intelligent resolve. Then as you understand better, your resolve becomes more honed to reality. So then it's, you know, obviously you're not losing any energy. If it's not honed to reality, if it's cross purposes, then it's losing energy all the time. But if it's completely in line with reality, it's got boundless energy. And it's effortless energy, because it's, it's kind of the energy that we need is because we're off centre, so we're having to keep pulling ourselves back all the time, whereas once we're completely there, it doesn't need any effort anymore. Was that the answer to it? I mean, it addressed his question. It's fun, isn't it? Hello, everybody who's there. helps increase our faith in the interpenetration of all time and place, doesn't it? You've got people in the room who are physically not in the room. I mean, all Western, all these modern gadgets are demonstrating that, aren't they? That's what Hermitage said when he first came to the West. In the old days, we only had about, I don't know, 8 or 10 examples of illusion. You've got loads, and that was about 30, 40 years ago. Now we've got even more.
My question is, how do we work with a situation in which we see that we can't have two things, for example, eating lots of cake and remaining thin, but we're not prepared to accept that yet?
That's called dukkha.
We're still struggling with the idea that why are we getting fat when we're eating all these cakes?
That's dukkha, really. That's what the Buddha said. You know, that situation is what suffering is. That we want something that we can't have because it's inherently not possible. It's not in line with reality. So we suffer. We try to make something, you know, we try to make something real that's not real, and then suffer when it falls apart. Well, you know, don't try and make something out of something that it's not. You've got to have that. It's got to be real. Otherwise, dukkha and this kind of all this fragmentation and energy getting blocked and just follows naturally from that lack of reality in the centre of it all. Does that make sense? And you know, this not wanting to accept it is exactly what's going on. That is what's causing samsara. That is what samsara is, almost.
Is it avidya, that not recognizing what's real?
Yeah, not recognizing what's real, and then because of not recognizing what's not real, you're grasping onto what's not real, which you wouldn't do if you could see it wasn't real. Then you wouldn't suffer. And we do it at all levels. Sorry?
Is that totally true that we wouldn't do it if we could see it wasn't real? Isn't that part of the problem, that even though we can see it's not real, we still keep trying?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's different subtle levels of it, because we can get a kind of intellectual understanding that that's true, what's being said. I mean, I can understand as I say this, I know it's true what I'm saying, but I know next time something comes along to upset me, I will struggle because I haven't completely realised it. I kind of am disturbed by the fact that I know it's true and I haven't realised it. So next time I get upset, I should be particularly upset by the fact that I'm upset because because I know actually there's no need because it's not real, but I will still have those habits that will spin me round and I'll have to work with it. So it is quite tragic. And in some ways, as a Dharma practitioner, you suffer even more in a way because you're even more aware than ever that it's all unnecessary. But that's a necessary stage, you know, because even though it seems that people who kind of completely, you know, you could say they're worldly success, and you think, well, look, they're worldly success, they don't suffer half as much as me. But wait till they do, and it's tragic. You know, sooner or later it hits them, and they're not prepared for it. Whereas for us, it's just business as usual, you know. We kind of know we're on the path and we're not there at the other side yet. I was thinking this morning of an example of how you practice Dharma and you don't see any progress. And I thought, it's like swimming the channel. When you're leaving the first shore, you see you're making progress because the shore's getting further and further away. In the middle of the channel, you can't see the other side coming up. But you've got to keep swimming and you're doing all the right movements, but nothing's happening, it seems. But it's not true. At some point you will see the shore coming towards you, but there's a long period of doing what you know must be right, but it's not really yielding what you would hope it would yield. But you're not making a mistake. Just keep going.
You might just be treading water.
Yeah, but still, it's pretty good.
You might be in Atlantic Ocean somewhere.
So it's not a completely good image. It doesn't work on all aspects. As Khenpo Rinpoche said, if it did work in all aspects, it wouldn't be an image, it would be the thing itself. True.
One more question. This is from somebody called Jackie Porter Smith,
Mm-hmm.
who said that there's
Hello, Jackie.
there's so much Dharma available these days that it can be overwhelming to
Yes.
make a choice
Yes.
to do.
That's it's interesting. It's a question that I had in mind this morning when I was thinking about this talk. How do you choose a big thing like that? Like how am I going to go about following the Dharma? You know, I was really trying to put my finger on how you make a decision like that, because you can't really say any Dharma teacher is going to be equally good. You can't say, you know, some people who are teaching Dharma or seem to be teaching Dharma might actually be getting it quite seriously wrong. I was thinking of the story of Angulimala, and he's obeying his teacher who was telling him to kill. And yet he was a very good disciple, and then when he met the Buddha told him to stop killing, and he did, and he quickly became enlightened. So the question then is, should I spend a lot of time examining lots of different teachers and deciding which is the best from an ignorant point of view, where I don't even know how I would tell what was the best? Or do I just start somewhere and then be a good disciple, and then through the blessing of the Buddhas, they will make sure that I end up in the right place? I think I'd go for the second one, really. Like, start somewhere and work with that, like the Buddha did, really. He met spiritual teachers, they had good reputations, and he followed their teaching, and he followed their teaching till he had learnt everything he could from them, before saying, and then they said, okay, that's it, I can't teach you anymore. Then he said, okay, well, I'll go off and, I haven't reached the end of I haven't reached the goal yet. But he always kept that very strong sense of connection with those teachers, and when he became enlightened, he wanted first of all to go and repay their kindness. So I think it is a risky business, and you're going to have to go by some kind of intuitive sense of somebody that it needs to be a person, somebody that you trust. And then you're going to have to work with them and hope it works out, and there's no guarantee it will. But I think if you're following the teaching in a genuine way, something will work out. There's the connections that are there for you, that have brought you into Dharma, will somehow draw you to where you need to be eventually. I don't think that's a very satisfactory answer, but then I think it would be wrong to say this was an easy thing to answer. It's like, how do you know who you should marry? It's funny, isn't it? How would you begin to say? When you test them out first and see whether they're good, it doesn't work like that, does it? By the time you tested them out, they'd have run off. It's really interesting that the most important and major decisions of our lives, we actually make the most intuitively, don't we? That's where we do find a place within ourselves that, even if it turns out even though we might make a choice that we think afterwards was a mistake, we still have to rely on our own ability to make a mistake and to correct it. It's still not up to someone else to tell us, if you understand what I mean. And I think it's the same with the Dharma teacher. Something in ourselves has got to tell us that this is working or not working. I mean, it's tricky to say that, because once you've said that, it sounds like I don't need to have particular commitment because I'm just there to judge the teacher. In which case you're not particularly open to the teacher, so you won't really get much benefit. So that is a real chicken and egg thing. That wasn't a very helpful answer, I'm afraid. But at least I empathised with the question. Yes?
Just an observation that I would always advise to be the best possible student,
Right.
rather than worry about whether or not it's the best student.
Yes, it's more or less what I'm saying, isn't it?
To yourself to get the best out of.
Yes.
For your own.
Yes.
Your own perspective.
That's one way of.
Be judgmental of what the teachings are presenting. Just be a good student.
That's basically what I'm saying is our only option in the end, but it's not a fail-safe thing. It's not that actually there's not such a thing as teachers who are actually, not really, what can you say? I mean, who are making some kind of serious mistake that you could be misled by. I wish I could say that is never the case, but when you think about it, how can that be the case when there's actually no limit to who could set themselves up as a teacher? So obviously you've got to use some kind of criteria for deciding whether somebody is likely to be a person that's reliable or not. And again, I notice, the Buddha made this comment, didn't he? He said, okay, you could say it has to be somebody from a lineage or a tradition, or and all those things are true, but they're not enough in themselves. And he ended up saying that you want to find a teacher who not only knows the truth but has realized it themselves, and that truth has to not be just any old truth, but it has to be very hard and difficult to understand truth, which that's quite a lot to go on, isn't it? So if it's something that's actually very easy, sort of very simple, like breathe deeply and relax, it's kind of very simple and quite easy to teach, but that isn't actually what it's going to sound like when you hear the Dharma. The Dharma is going to sound like something quite really difficult to realise. That's a clue. But then anybody can talk in an enigmatic and difficult way and say, well, the reason you don't understand is because you're so, it's difficult, but in fact they're just talking nonsense. So I've thought about this a lot, and I can't find any answer that you can't find the opposite, you know, that it's also not true. Yeah, so I think you have to accept that it's going to be risky. So good luck. It's like getting married, isn't it? Well, that was nice, wasn't it, having questions from people who are not in the room? I enjoyed that. Thank you. Okay, we dedicate this punya to the enlightenment of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings realize complete and perfect awakening. May the heart's awareness awaken in the unawakened. Where it has begun to stir, may it never fade, and may it awaken fully. Chanju samni rinpoche machapanam jajajik jaba nyamba mapadam kone kondu pawasho. Chanju samni rinpoche machapanam jajajik jaba nyamba mapadam kone kondu pawasho. Chanju samni rinpoche machapanam jajajik jaba nyamba mapadam kone kondu pawasho. Well, thank you, Dashi, for setting that up. And I was going to try and relate what I said today to the precepts, but I forgot. But actually, if you think about it, it does relate to the precepts very much. And I think it is tomorrow that the course starts. There's an online course starting on the precepts tomorrow, so I just wanted to make this connection with those students who are on that course, saying that this is relevant to the precepts. You know, like why do we take the precepts, and the spirit behind them, and how to make sure that they are, we're keeping the precepts in order to follow our own resolve that we're making within ourselves, rather than as rules that are imposed from outside that we get kind of legalistic about. Because as Mahayana practitioners, there's a big shift from the sense of I keep the letter of the precept into much more a sense of keeping the spirit of the precept. So I'm sure that will come up in your discussions over the weeks to come. Okay, thank you.